Good morning. We'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order for August 7th, 2024. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was the worst Pledge of Allegiance this board has ever done. What the heck is going on? All right, it's been a while. But we remembered the words. Roll call, please.
Mr. Barnes.
Present.
Mrs. Burdick. Here. Mr. Curran. Mr. Demick.
Here.
Mr. Fanton.
Here.
Mrs. Hanchett.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Havey.
Here.
Mr. Healy.
Here.
Mrs. Ricketts Swales.
Here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ricky's absent. Mrs. Root. Mr. Rumfeld. Mr. Stockin. 10 present, 5 absent.
Thank you, ma'am. Two big agenda items today, which would normally fall under the jurisdiction of DPW space needs, but got a big space needs agenda later in the month. Mr. Demick requested we knock a couple of these out because they're time sensitive too. So we're going to start with talking about the parsonage. The board needs to provide some direction on just what we want to do down there. So I guess if I could, and I don't care if Carissa does it or Tom, if somebody could come back up, give us the refresher on where we are, and we get the discussion going. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. So pursuant to the directioning we received from the board, Hunt put together the full bid package, and we went out to bid. I guess it's in the Public Works paperwork, but I'll just go over it real quick. Obviously, because of the size of the project, it was 4 different trades. General trades work, we actually received 2 bids for the general work. I thought it would be in Mike's synopsis, but it's not. Low bidder was was Kinley Contractors at $653,400. Mechanical work, low bid was $214,450. Plumbing work, low bid with alternate was $83,200. And then the electrical was John Mills with alternates was $365,900 for a total project of $1,316,950. And we have the bid specs and plans. We've talked about printing them out, but it's really difficult to see in the smaller sizes, so be happy to go over them with anybody that's got a question of what the renovations entail. But basically it is, per SHPO's requirements, we were not replacing siding. We're scraping and painting all of the paint off, repainting them, redoing the windows, and then basically a complete renovation on the inside, and finishing off the garage space that's there now, I guess you can call it a garage, into just storage for files and for the IT cabinet was going to go in there.
Will there be HVAC work in the garage?
Correct.
Yes,
it would
climate
be-
controlled and the
It
whole
would be
deal.
climate controlled throughout the whole building, and all new HVAC systems. Dwight had a great comment the other day about the backup generator. Why was it that expensive? It's going to go to 3-phase power because of the HVAC system. It's a system that we're familiar with. Buildings and Grounds is familiar with the systems. It's more energy efficient, but it does provide heating and air conditioning throughout the whole structure.
Could that be utilized by Board of Elections or no?
So yes, as the ad alternate is proposed to be awarded, if you agree to both ad alternates, it would not only be a backup generator for this building, but it would also be for Board of Elections.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about the funding that we believe is to be provided by ILS?
That one I'll leave to Carissa.
Okay.
Good morning. The funding that ILS is providing, we believe to be around $793 towards this project. You had previously appropriated $250,000. You've spent approximately $60,000. You've actually spent around $50,000, but you do still have some possible obligations to hunt on that could be upwards of $60,000.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you remind us how we funded that?
That was an ARPA fund.
Okay.
So the balance of what you have allocated in ARPA is approximately 190. And that leaves approximately 407 that you would still need to fund on this. You previously allocated 250, and you spent approximately 60 out of that, or should say you've spent 60. Remaining funds out of ARPA are 190. And you have 793 from ILS, and that still leaves a gap of approximately 407. So your options, in my mind, would be you either appropriate from fund balance into this budget to put into this account, or you look at what's remaining in ARPA. You did have money set aside for the fair if you did not get that grant. A little bit more than this, you could use that money towards this. Just a reminder, you need to appropriate all your ARPA monies by the end of the year. So you do need to start spending that down.
Okay, we're going to have a long conversation about ARPA in a couple of weeks here, but in general, what do we have that hasn't been allocated out of the ARPA funds?
My understanding, and I'm just going off my memory, is that there was approximately 26,000 that you haven't spent or earmarked. And then there was an amount for the fair, and I can't, it was for something, I can't remember the, 450 that you had earmarked for the fair. But you hadn't officially done a resolution appropriating it.
Okay, so this would pretty much wipe it out. We'd have to figure out how to expend another 20-some thousand dollars by the end of the year.
I don't think you'd have any problem doing that.
Probably right. Okay, any questions on any of that so far? Mr. Havey?
Hi, Carissa.
Hi.
Remind me how long we have to use the entire building for conflict defender before we can use some of the spaces for something else?
I don't think we have that information. So most times a grant would have a useful life for anything that you buy with the grant. I don't know if we have that for the building for the grant.
Okay. As I mentioned in a previous meeting, I was interested in utilizing the space in the building the best way we possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have a number of space needs, and I was afraid, and I thought that we would have to commit the entire building to conflict defender for a period of time, say 5, 8 years, something.
I think you will have to.
Yeah?
I definitely do. The building is designed for just one office. There's not really the possibility of putting other offices in there. And I'm almost certain that ILS will say that you have to use it for the purposes in which they're funding for a certain amount of time. I just don't know what that duration is.
Okay.
Buildings have a long life expectancy.
Oh, true. Is it likely that the conflict defender's office needs that much space?
So indigent services is a very complicated thing. I always feel like we almost need a chart. But it's a 3-phase thing. It starts with assignments go to public defender, and what they can't handle would go to a conflict defender, and what they can't handle go to assigned counsel. Assigned counsel are almost like contract attorneys that you're obligated to pay for, and, because we're obligated to do indigent legal services. So conflict defender, I believe, has 2.5 employees right now, 2 full-time and 1 part-time. I think they would like additional staff, because the more staff you have there, theoretically, the less assigned counsel you would need to worry about. We'd be moving those staff to this building, and we'd also be allowing assigned counsel to meet with their clients in that building too.
Yeah.
So all these attorneys that come from Buffalo or Rochester, or even, local, to meet with their clients would have a dedicated space to do that.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm just kind of looking at that, wondering if we can get more mileage out of this expenditure, but clearly in the short term, we can't, and we'll see how it goes, I guess.
Correct.
Thank you.
Gretchen, then Jan.
So the numbers that you gave makes me feel a little bit better on moving forward. And I know that's something we've wanted to make sure that we utilize the properties that we have. But in looking at what we're getting from, is it ELI or ELA?
ILS, Indigent
ILS.
Legal Services. Very, very nice folks. They come down and visit quite a bit.
So that's a lot more than we thought, really.
It is.
And-
Now, they'll also be funding the furnishings and other things. You get a brand-new building, there's always other costs to moving in, and hopefully we can claim some of those on ILS funds as well.
So we've already appropriated 250, we've spent about 60,000 of it. So we do have a balance in there. And so we're looking at needing about 407, which is a minimal cost compared to the great big picture. I know lots of time there's been 1.2, 1.3 thrown out there, but with some of the funding that is not costing the taxpayers, it's really a great way to go. And I know that there's concerns about the number of employees per square foot, but the thing is yes, they can get more people in there. Yes, 10 years down the road, it can be utilized for something else. It's really a investment in property that we already have. So by the time, if we look at our balance from ARPA now, whether we want to use it all there, and what we had for the fair, now they have that grant, we're talking really pretty much having it almost completely funded.
It's always nice when you can stretch your local share, and a dollar isn't always a dollar if you're getting it from other sources. So yes, it isn't a very expensive project, but as you pointed out, a lot of that money is coming from a different source and not out of our county taxpayers' wallets.
Correct, so, and, as we move forward and look for the future, I think it's important, as has been said by many of us in here, investment is something that's really important on that. It might not meet the needs quite at that time, but investing to make sure that we cover for future mandates or things that we need is very important. So I'm glad we're still moving forward on this. I know it's been back and forth, and the cost has been something that people have been concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burdick?
I have a completely different take on it than Gretchen. I just don't know how we justify spending this kind of money for one office. I know part of the funding and a lot of the funding is coming from an outside source, but it just seems to me like that money could be put to a better use. We're looking at finishing up the third floor. Is there an alternate use that office, since it's one office is all we're talking about, could move up there? Is this a mandated program?
So I'll start with the easy one first. It's not a mandated program. You're not required to have a conflict defender's office, and you're not required to build it out to have lots of people in it either, if you were to have one. But that is a road you've chosen. I don't believe you could use this ILS money for anything else at this point in time because it has to be spent by the end of the state fiscal year, so by the end of next March. And Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we have time to go engineer the third floor and spend that money out. So while theoretically you could move them up there, you couldn't probably use this ILS money to do it with. The time's just too short at this point.
Okay.
March of,
2025.
My other question is, before we created this office, we contracted out, correct?
Correct. Before you did this office, you contracted with a legal firm. So it was Allegheny Cattaraugus Legal Services, and they had a subset of attorneys that provided conflict defender, provided that second tier of indigent legal defense before it went to assigned counsel.
So have we looked at the cost of that compared to what we're now investing for this one office?
I believe we have. My understanding is we're doing okay when compared to conflict defender versus that contract, but our cost on assigned counsel have skyrocketed in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I believe we are way over budget, I think, on assigned counsel costs. And I don't know if Jenna, I think Terry mentioned 800,000 is what we spent this year. Yeah. That could be a couple of things. That could be that we're using assigned counsel more in conjunction with the fact that the state raised the hourly pay rate that we have to pay assigned counsel. Remember, they increased that quite a bit.
I guess that's just my comments. I just have a hard time looking at these figures for an old building, and for one office. And I realize, but, you can say we're not using taxpayers' money, but we are. Any money from the state is still taxpayer money. So it's not local taxpayer money, but it is everybody's tax money. So I just have a real concern about spending this kind of money and the number of other projects that we're looking at that need to be done.
And I don't disagree with you. I didn't mean it wasn't taxpayer
No,
money in
no, I
general, but it's
know.
just a way to stretch the local share
Yeah.
further.
Thank you.
Jen?
Questions. One is, looking at this, I don't see anything on like, and I'm guessing it's in the electrical, but like, the computer wiring, things like that, is that included in the cost? And then the other one is, what about security of this building? It's my understanding that a lot of these appointments will be at night, which is why we didn't want them in this building. So are we gonna have to worry about like having security? Will it just be cameras, or will we have to have deputies there? What are we thinking?
So my understanding is all of the electrical runs are in there for IT. And it's just be a matter of IT plugging and playing computers into outlets. And the same, the security cameras, we spec'd out all of those and worked with IT to make sure that we would have all the same cameras and door swipe access that we currently have on our current system would be bid in this as well. But yes, that would be the only security. There's not, and that's the same with some of our campuses. This really, the jail, because of the nature, obviously has security there. And this building, because we're tied to the courts, are the only county buildings that have full-time people stationed here for security.
Mr. Havey?
Just an observation. I know that when we bought these properties, our initial intent was to provide a home for the Board of Elections, which we have, and that's functioning very well. But we acquired these other two assets, and because we own them, the question is, what do we do with them? It's very expensive to do demolition and come up with a lot that looks proper afterwards. It's also, you're talking about, if you were thinking of demolition, it would be sad and unfortunate because these buildings are landmarks in the village of Belmont. So if we can preserve this building for $407,000 and use it for something, and we're going to have also this conversation at some point about the church, but we're not there yet. We're talking about this one particular building, which is ours, which is an asset. And I think for $400,000, we probably need to preserve it.
Thank you. Mr. Barnes?
A few questions about the building itself as it stands right now. I assume that the engineers have gone through it and feel that it's going to stand for another
I'll let
100
Tom
years?
answer that question, but I think the answer was yes.
But as far as obviously putting all this money into it, it's got something that's of value left in it.
Yes, that's correct. And a lot of, not a lot of it, but some of it will be structural renovations. There was floorboards and things that were noted by the code enforcement officer back when the previous code enforcement officer was here, because other individuals had ideas of using that building. And she noted several deficiencies at that point in time. They have addressed all of those concerns, yes. And our new code enforcement officer has gone through the plans. He's accepted what, they have proposed, so.
How about the roof?
The roof is gonna stay as is. It's
So
existing shingle roof. It's in good shape. They did not feel it was needed to do anything with it at this point in time.
how about, will they have a sprinkler system in?
It will not have a sprinkler system.
So as far as fire prevention or retardant,
We will have a fire alarm system that will be reportable to 911, just like we do in this building and other buildings.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Burdick?
This is a two-story building, correct?
That is correct.
Is it ADA accessible?
It will be. It
So
will be when it's done, yes. There will be
There's
a ramp.
So was that come under the general contracting part, or where is that in the quote?
More than likely, yes. I think that's general, yeah, that would be because it's a ramp outside plus a covering over it.
And the bathrooms?
Bathrooms will be ADA compliant, correct.
So they don't need any kind of lift or anything for the second floor?
That's correct, because that's extra space. The first floor space is their occupiable space, but they can have meetings upstairs or client and attorney rooms, they can go upstairs and use it. But if they happen to have somebody that needs ADA accessibility, they can have those same accommodations on the first floor.
So you're pretty sure that's included in the
That
bid?
is, yes,
Okay,
it's
thank
all
you.
included. You're welcome. And I can show you, Jan, if you want to see it.
Mr. Demick.
The,
Yeah, Tom, could you verify, I know it's been discussed, when this all started, we talked about tearing down a building and building a new one, that the cost per square foot of a new building's like $900 a square foot, and what this figures out to be around $450.
I did the
think it
math
was-
last time, but I can't remember what that square footage is. Yes, it's less than what the new would have been, but a lot of it depends on, your bidding environment. Unfortunately, we didn't have a whole lot of bidders. We're going up against school work, and in our neck of the woods, you don't have a lot of people that can do this type of work and get this kind of bonding. So, you are limited, but, that's the prices that came out, yes.
I saw you, Mr. Barnes, but Ms. Hanchett, and then we'll hit you, Gary.
I guess this would probably be for Carissa. For the assigned counsel, that we've had to spend, close to $800,000, where does that money come from? Is it reimbursable? If they were able to get counselors in there, more in there, would that save us money because that's paid through ILS?
It's a very complicated budgeting question, but generally, your conflict defenders save you money because they are salaried, right? So you're not paying them at the rate the state says you have to pay assigned counsel. So if you had a robust conflict defenders office, theoretically, there'd be less assignments and you would be saving a little bit of money on the cost. The rest is budgeted. It is not reimbursable from ILS, except for they will pay 50% of the difference in the increase they just mandated. So once you document all the hours and how much of that can go towards this mandate, and I think that's only for criminal defense, not family defense, they will reimburse 50% of that. So,
Right, I just was wondering, would that increase and where it was coming from, how it's budgeted, and I guess I always thought they were funded a little bit more for that. But
ILS will, they'll supplement but not supplant your cost. So anything that was already a county liability, you can never use those funds towards. So like the public defender can use ILS money for extra things. They can buy or pay salaries of assistant public defenders we never had previously, or extra equipment we never had, but they can't use it to pay like the public defender's salary himself, because that was always a county cost prior. So we can only use it to buy extra things. We can't use it to reimburse ourselves for things we had budgeted in years past.
So extra lawyers or staff, and I know we need them in many other offices too, they would supplement that.
Only for public
Only for
defender
con-
or conflict defender.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Barnes.
yes, going back to the structure, you say that the siding is going to be retained.
Correct.
Sanded, painted, whatever.
Right.
How about insulation? Is it, you going to have more insulation
That's
from the
correct.
inside? Then?
Yes,
And the windows are all going to be replaced?
that's correct.
How about the doors?
Doors as well, except for, I think, the entry door they're going to try and rehab due to SHPO's requirements. But all of the other ones will be new.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Knapp.
I had a follow-up question on the ADA requirement, because first story, second story always gets a little confusing. But it's my understanding that it's almost like a 1-to-1 ratio. If you can provide one office that's ADA compliant on the first floor, you could do one office that's not upstairs. But if you did not have that on the first floor, you could not have that on the second story without a lift or an elevator.
That is correct. If it's dedicated space that's not redundant on the first floor, then yes, you would have to have a lift.
And it's almost like a one-to-one requirement, so you couldn't have one office that's ADA on the first floor and 7 that aren't upstairs.
Correct.
Mr. Stocking.
I appreciate all the comments and I'm in favor of it, but I look at it as if we sitting here with an empty building and we got to do something with it to use it, and this is a way to do it with a lot of other money that's not ours, I'm just in favor. And who knows, like we say, down the road, we can perhaps do whatever we want with it and it'll be ready as opposed to being useless right now. But just my
Legislators
opinion.
Lounge.
Only if there's a way to get them down the hill.
All right, so, yes, Mr. Healy.
No, I have to agree with Mr. Stock, and I think at this point in time, our options are limited, and I think it's a wise course of action.
It'll be one of the nicest houses in Belmont by the time we're done with it. So what are you guys seeking today? It's in particular.
Actually, it's on the agenda for the committee for Public Works, so
Okay.
that's where we'll have, we're hoping to get directioning as far as if we were gonna move forward into our committee, so we could at least get it through that steps. So it'll go through our committee, and then it will go through the next steps to get full approval. But we felt like if we didn't have consensus, we would probably remove it from the DPW committee, so.
Are you fine with that, Carissa, with the timing and all?
Yes, and I think you'll just need to come back fairly soon and make a decision on the funding. But
Correct.
you don't have to do that today. I don't believe that needs to be done today.
Okay, so we'll do a straw poll here in a second, but Ms. Burdick?
Have you asked the contractors, as far as a time frame, can they realistically have this done by the deadline?
They will have that money spent by the deadline, the 793, for sure. They've all committed to that. That's not a problem. It actually worked out quite well with them because school season is going to be finishing up here in September, so they can get right on it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So with the understanding we have some absences today, can we do a show of hands and to indicate support of moving forward with the project? Almost. Enough, though. Okay, you guys feel comfortable with that? Did you have something, Mr. Healy? Okay. Okay. All right, we good on that? Okay, onward. 55 Chamberlain. So I guess let's do the same thing we did with the parsonage. And I don't care if it's Carissa or Tom. Can you give us the refresher on how we got where we are? Sorry, Tom.
Sure. We purchased the building in May at some point and closed on it. Shortly thereafter, I know the week of June 3rd, when Fred and I were at highway school, Dr. Anderson, Miss White, Dan Moyer, Mallory, Dean, and Carissa went and visited the site to take a look at it. That's when they came up with what they were hoping for renovations in there. And then on June 18th, we actually took codes there as well. Dave Kelleher, thank you, Dave Kelleher and Hunt. Knowing that there was going to be renovations required, we wanted to get both of them involved to see what would need to be done. We wanted them both together because it worked very well at the Parsonage House to make sure that Hunt was addressing any of Dave's concerns with anything. So,
Okay, let me interrupt you real quick. So
You bet.
at this point, you're just concerned about getting it up to code and getting a certificate of occupancy. No consideration as to changes or wishes or wants or anything
no,
like
that was the kickoff to it, was the fact that they wanted renovations.
And also we need to know if they need, how much renovations they're looking
Correct.
at. Because if they're looking at massive renovations where you couldn't do that if they were occupying it, we need to know that before we move them in. So that was
Correct.
a question we needed answered right away.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was, like I said, I wasn't there at the first meeting, but I was there at the second one with the codes and with Hunt. They described exactly what they were looking for renovations. And coming out of that meeting, I was asking Hunt to provide us a proposal for a building condition assessment, much like they did with all of the other buildings, so we could add that to our system, which is on the committee this afternoon. And then once they got that evaluation done, we would come back with a proposal to do the design work of what was requested for renovations in the space. So that was our timeline and what we've been working towards. So the first phase would be them to get in there and analyze it, and then with that information, they could give us a better proposal on renovations, because we don't have at-scale drawings. You know, that was one thing that they would need to start doing the design work. What is all the dimensions currently, and what is all there currently? So that was step one. So that's really where we're at, as far as I know. It's on the agenda this afternoon to approve the building condition assessment. Then once they get that work done, get it around, we can get a proposal to move forward if we want to do any renovations there.
Okay, so at this point, operating under an assumption that no unnecessary work would be done, how much would it cost and what would be the time frame for getting community services into the building?
I don't know about cost, but I can tell you from my standpoint, from a building standpoint, we did talk to Dave about certificate of occupancy, because Brenda had actually asked us for that for the insurance company. And Dave would not issue a new C of O because there's an existing C of O for that building. So I've reached out to the Village of Wellsville's code enforcement officer looking for their C of O of the previous occupant, and that would cover us. So we're still in the process of getting that. Once we have that, we can get it to our insurance company, and we actually could move in at any point in time. Dave is completely comfortable with us occupying it and using it as it is. So as far as I know, from what they initially saw in a quick walkthrough, there's a couple small electrical things that we would like to take care of, and we need to put a gutter on the one side where the driveway comes in, because the water's coming right into the basement. But other costs, I'll let Carissa talk to, but.
Okay. And now I had heard some mention of internet and security, is that right?
Well, and Keith's been through here too, and he can probably address it from a county network perspective and what they would need to operate any offices or cubicles or whatnot. From a security aspect, I can just say we'd already purchased a number of cameras and swipe card access devices for the current community services building that we have not installed. We halted that once we knew we were buying this building. So we have equipment we'll need to install in this that will put it on the same system that we currently operate. Yes, it does have a security system, like an alarm system. We do not need that. What we need is for it to be on the same system that the sheriff currently sees. If there's a problem, we can alert to that. It also works with the current swipe cards that we have. So that's one thing that we'd want to have done. I don't know that necessarily needs to be done before they move in, but that would be a goal to get that. We purchased the equipment to install it. My main concern is for anybody that's been to the building, the ADA access is around back. It's a lovely concrete ramp. It's really nice. But when you walk in the door, you are walking into a kitchenette. And that is there's not space there for a reception area. That would be secured to hold people. The only spot that I think, when we walked through it, that Tom and Dean thought you could maybe turn into a reception area right there would be what is currently the conference room. You could make that a waiting area, secured reception, and then you could either turn people into the heart of the older part of the building, or you could turn them back around towards the new addition.
Could that work happen while it was occupied?
Potentially, but I think the bigger problem then becomes community services needs a conference room. And then where do you put a conference room in the building? So that was the biggest question I heard when we were out there. And I don't know how else, I mean, you'd have to almost have somebody, a consultant, come in to tell you if there was another option for a secured entry point. Because right now, you literally enter into a kitchenette, and there's really not room to do anything there.
I have a question. With that big of a building and that much square footage, isn't there something that could be put together during that time so we can get them in there?
I think it just depends on how you want to use the new addition as well. There was talk about subleasing that, if you're willing to use that for our own needs rather than subleasing it in the meantime. Those are things you could be looking at as well.
All right, so why don't we do this? We've got Dr. Anderson and Lindy are here. Would one or both of you be willing to come up and just talk to us about your thoughts on the building, how you feel about it in its current condition? What are your wants? What are your must-haves? Let's separate fact from fiction here. Good morning.
I wish I could separate fact from fiction, but I think there's somewhat of a misunderstanding in what is said that we requested. I don't remember requesting all of the things that were suggested without encouragement from the people that were there with us. For example, we have no problem with someone coming in the cement, having a doorbell there, and the secretaries let them in and take them to where they need to be. Is that ideal? No. In fact, the best suggestion that was there was the one that you were talking about, of turning the boardroom into the waiting room secretary. But as you pointed out, that does have its downside. And once you start looking at all of those things, then it isn't so much that we require them as that you end up being forced into making other renovations, corrections, every time you turn around and you look at something. If you alter the entrance and you make it so that you come into the boardroom, then obviously you're forced into making another boardroom, and that requires other stuff. And then when you start looking at doing that, at the time we were told we needed, in order to be ADA compliant, we needed to have an elevator to give access to the second floor, whether it was for our employees or the patients coming. And it wasn't until last Thursday or Friday that someone indicated that perhaps it wasn't necessary. And yet, the first person that made sense, Carissa, was you when you explained that there is that ADA requirement that says if you have one on the ground floor, you may have one upstairs. That's the first thing that has made sense about the whole elevator brouhaha, okay?
And I'm sure it's tough. Not everyone in the boardroom has been to see the building. I know a couple have, but right now, the upstairs is largely one big open room. It's gorgeous, but if you want to start subdividing that into offices, that's when you get into, do you need an elevator or not?
It's, the upstairs is offices now.
There's a few, but then that large room that's maybe about the size of this room that's completely open.
Yeah. But there are enough offices that we could function up there. And there are the two offices on the first floor where we could see patients. But it wasn't until you said what you did this morning that I began to understand what it is that becomes complicated about the ADA thing. Because before it was just explained to me, if you had employees upstairs or patients coming upstairs, you had to have access for it.
And it's a tough one because we don't all deal with all the things that Tom and Dean have to deal with all the time, that, you know, we sometimes maybe skip over a couple of simpler explanations and we just say that would then mean, you know, this or that.
So, as far as we're concerned, and speak up if you disagree, but as far as we're concerned, having the telephone and the internet are the two really critical things that we need to be able to be in there. Having a different access would be advantageous, but it isn't required. It isn't, we can easily, we let people in now.
Yes, but you also have a room for them to go into when you let them in.
And we would have a room for them to go to when we let them in. We're not gonna leave them in the kitchen. We'll take them through and to the next office. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the next office the conference room?
on that side, yes. And
Okay.
I'm not, when I say that, I'm saying the secretaries can take them through that hallway and put them in the waiting room that is back by the where the front door is. Okay, the front door has two rooms that they used to use as secretaries, and we could put patients in there where the secretaries would
So they'll come in the ADA access, and then you escort them through your own office spaces, and you put them in a waiting
be.
room?
It's a hallway.
So let me help out a little bit here. So I'll provide some context, okay? When the property itself was presented to the board, it was presented as a practically turnkey building, beautiful, nothing needs to be done. It's the nicest building we've ever seen, okay? So this board approved the purchase of that building, and I think it was an excellent choice, the decision made by the board to purchase that building. It is not until recently that the board has been made aware that there was this potential for hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements that needed to be made in order to make it able to be occupied. So where we are now is, it sounds as though there is more conversation that needs to be had about what exactly is needed. But what I'm asking you, Doc, if you would please let the board know, it sounds as though you feel comfortable with what it looks like now with minimal changes to get you in there. In other words, you are prioritizing making the move, which is what I think the board wants, because we want to improve your workspace, we want to improve your security, all those things. I don't know what the situation is with lease, if we're paying month to month now or what the deal is, but that's secondary to me. Is that what you're telling us? You would like to move in, that's what you're prioritizing, as opposed to making significant changes that would delay your occupancy?
Yes.
Okay. And
And the thing is, I am not trying to second guess you, because the suggestions that were made, we took as suggestions and that this was the way to go. And I don't disagree, except that I'm, as you well know, I am not Tom, and I do not have the slightest clue what needs to be done and how much it would cost.
I think we were asking you those questions because once you're in there, it becomes very difficult to work around you working. You'd almost have to exit the building again to do anything. So we
Yes.
need to know what it is your wish list is, and then have this very conversation. Is it practical to do the wish list, or is it more practical just to move in? So, as we all know, many employees work in less than ideal conditions, and I'm sure if you were to survey all our department heads, especially Rita, they could give you a long list of all their big desires. But it is important from a planning perspective to not have you next year say, oh, and I want this office or that office. And we do hear that from department heads. That is something we hear after they're in a space.
And I wouldn't say that 2 years or 3 years from now, Lindy wouldn't say, well, Robert was crazy, he didn't know what he was talking about, this is really. So, there's always that possibility, but I think we've kind of felt like things happened without us.
Well, I don't think anything has happened. We had that conversation, I think my record was June 10th, and we talked about all these things. In the meantime, you can't move in anyways, because we don't have that certificate of occupancy. This is,
Right.
we're just learning what it is you want, and then we could then have this conversation with the board. We do need to do a couple things with IT and some of the equipment we already have, but again, that's not holding up any of that conversation either.
And that, when people ask me, that's what I say, is we're just waiting to be told what can be done.
Okay. Mr. Stockin has a thought or question.
Put me on the pressure there.
Yep.
You straightened out in that last back and forth what I'm saying. So there's a front door with a entrance, secretary, a waiting room for all the non-ADA people. You're saying that if an ADA comes the back door, you can go down the hallway, welcome them in, take them back up to the front room.
Yes.
Okay. My question then, having all that cleared up, what kind of traffic is ADA compared to your total amount? I mean, is this something where the secretary is going to be running like a, relay meet back and forth all day, or are they once every few days?
No, there would not be a lot of traffic with the secretary going back and forth. We probably get 2 visitors a day, 2 to 3 visitors a day. And that some days we get none. So it wouldn't be a lot of back and forth. The way we have it set up right now is our front door is locked, so anytime anybody comes, they get up, and that's a security measure to let them in.
So what percentage, do you have any idea, of your visits are ADA needing people? How many would have to go to the back door?
This is purely a guess. 5%.
I'm just going to point out that front entrance is nowhere near any parking either. So even if you're able-bodied and you're parking, you have to walk all the way down the parking lot and around the sidewalk to come in the front entrance. So you probably do want all your traffic to come in that door, even if they're not not non-able-bodied.
And that's what Lindy was responding to, is that we probably get 3 to 5 people a day that we might have to get up and let them in. The people that come there for meetings, and we have at least 4 or 5 meetings a week that are county-wide participants, they all know they're coming, we know they're coming, and that's all right, It's counted on, but the number of times that somebody comes to the door it's definitely less than 5 a day.
Ms. Rickus-Wells.
Well, having worked in this line of work for myself, I understand. I used to have an office in an old incinerator, so I'm with you. I think I hear them saying that they need phone, they need internet, and I don't think that the space you're in right now is particularly desirable. You'd be happy with the space. If down the road you need some improvements, you'd be happy to, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking for you, but that's what it sounds like I'm hearing, is you need phone lines, you need internet, you probably need some security. Those cameras and things that they'd already purchased probably need to be installed, and you'd be happy with whatever minor things need to do, and let's go from there, right? And
That's from my perspective.
Sure.
But having the experts walk through and say, this is what you might want to look at, because if we have to build a room, if we do it now, it's a lot easier. I personally don't think we need the rooms, but in order to be able to have the rooms usable on the second floor, we do have to provide something on the first floor. And that's a discussion that we need to have
But-
probably without.
Am I wrong in that as long as like there are restrooms that are ADA compliant on the first floor, there are enough spaces that are ADA compliant for employees and for customers or clients that you're okay? As long as your conference room, things like that are on the first floor and they're all ADA compliant, I mean, I don't know. I'm with Jan on this. I'd like to get you guys moved as fast as we can because it doesn't sound like you're in a happy building right now. And I guess I kind of thought, I mean, I don't know, I kind of thought you'd already started moving.
Okay, we got a long line going here. Thank you. Mr. Demick, then Mr. Healy, then Ms. Bird.
I'd just like to mention as the Space Needs Committee Chair, there are some things that will probably be brought to light August 14th meeting. I would like to suggest, as we're working on moving him in there as quick as we can, it's going to take a little time to get the phones and internet, the occupancy set up, that maybe we should have a little information, communication meeting with Dr. Anderson and Ms. White, with the DPW, Dean and Tom and Carissa, Jan, and let you tell us your needs, let us explain some things to you that we might be looking for in the future, so everybody's on the same page. I think that's very important. I don't think we're at that point. I agree with what you're talking about. I think you could get moved in there at any time. That's what we bought the building for. There's no doubt that's what we're going to use it for, in my book. But that's my suggestion as a Space Needs Committee person. I'd like to have a little powwow and get everybody on the same page.
Thank you. Mr. Healy, you got something?
Some of the major changes they were talking about, is that something we could get at right away? That's my question, would be what timeline would it be, the major changes, we could get them done and then wait on some of the other stuff, that would be more of the wish list stuff later. And I guess my other question would be on funding, if we have any additional funding for any of the extra costs for changes, and also if we might be able to utilize Alfred State Vocational School, since they're right there and helping us with some of this or not.
So back to where I started, you got to know where you're at. Okay, so that's where we wanted to get Hunt in there to get a condition assessment done, so we knew exactly where we're at today. And then anything that changed, at least they would have a starting point to have drawings of, square footage. You need to know what each room is and where everything is. So that was the next point, was to bring an additional proposal forward after we had, finalized what was going to be required for renovations. So none of this all of this takes time, Mike. But yeah, once you make those decisions, then you can figure out, during that process, you got to figure out where the money's coming from, and then figure out who can do it.
So we got to get Hunt in there first. You're telling me they haven't taken a look at it.
That's correct. That was the first step. And like I said, it's on the agenda for today. So that's what we've been working towards. Again, I missed the first meeting when, all I came into was the second meeting, and that's what I was told. These are what are going to be required for them to move in, and that's been the process of where I've taken it from there.
I guess I was under the impression that Hunt had taken a look at that building.
They initially, when we were in the process of buying it, we asked them for a cursory review. So they did a cursory review for us. They didn't do a full in-depth building assessment like they've done with all the other buildings.
All right,
That's the difference.
thank you for
And
clarifying
I'm
that.
100% behind Tom. Very least, those plans are very important. Having plans for all of our buildings, we need that done no matter what. It helps not just from a planning perspective if you go to do future work, but also on a cost allocation perspective if you were to use the building, if you were to split it, if you were to rent it, we need to know square footage per room, those sorts of things.
Save us, Jan.
Okay, here I go. I'm frustrated. I can't even imagine how frustrated you two are. When, like Brooke said, when that building was bought, it was move-in ready. This was the palace for community services. And then it just, everything seemed to stop. And that's where my frustration is. We bought that building, what'd we say, in March? Here it is, August. And we've done basically nothing other than talk about different things that may need to be done. Hunt apparently has not gone in there and done it yet. I don't understand what takes so long to get a certificate of occupancy. It's a piece of paper that you print off the computer. I just am very frustrated in the process and why it's taking so long to get some action taken on this. If anybody has been to their current building, you would be embarrassed and ashamed to go in that building, and you'd consider it dangerous. And right now, you have to ring a doorbell, just like they're gonna do there, to get in. And the secretary meets you, walks you into whoever, like I was there the other day meeting with Dr. Anderson. She met me at the front door, escorted me to the conference room. So nothing's gonna change there. You're still, no matter what entrance you come in, you're still gonna be escorted to where you're supposed to be going. So to say that you can't walk into a kitchenette, or I don't understand. I guess maybe I'm being very naive on this, but I think we need to take some action. I think we need to start working on this and make it a priority. I know funding, I'm the first one that always asks, how are we gonna fund it? I'm gonna ask that again, because that's important too. But I think we need to start moving on this. I just don't see why everything has to take so long to get something started and done. Sorry.
I can just say it's not as though no work has been done on this. Things do take time. I know Tom in his office had been working away with Hunt on how to move this forward. He's been hounding the Village of Wellsville constantly to get that certificate of occupancy. He's been working with our state code enforcement officer to make sure there weren't any other requirements. There's a lot of work being done. It's just not work to the next level or the next step. And unfortunately, that's the state no matter what you're going to do. Even looking at this parsonage house, which we rushed because of available funding, has taken months to get to the point where you're even able to award a contract and move forward. Simple construction, many little simple projects, I believe Tom has staff that can do a lot of simple things, but building offices and those things would all have to be contract out and bid. So that's also why we need to know, is this a small project that we can do in staff and then it's a matter of time for Tom to schedule it, or is this something that we would have to go through a larger process with?
And the minute it became a full renovation with walls, everything else, you got to modify HVAC. None of that stuff is stuff that we can do. And that's where I just wanted to clarify, when this was told to us, this is what needs to happen, that's what started us on this course. And the question was asked, can you move in and occupy as is? And the answer was no. So that's why we're at where we're at.
Okay, but who?
Maybe that's changed, and that's fine.
Right. I guess, I think there's a real lack of communication going on too. Dr. Anderson says he's ready to move in. Who's saying otherwise, and who's saying that you have to build offices and change the heating and HVAC? I mean, it just seems like Brooke said, we need a meeting, and we all need to be on the same page and figure this out and get it moving. Whether it's a full renovate, whatever, but we need to start talking and communicating with each other. I have been hearing all kinds of rumors. I'm like, first I heard any of this.
Ms. Burdick, I think I can address that for Tom. We've had meetings with Lindy and Dr. Anderson in my office in DPW, and maybe the error was just not including some board members, and maybe that's what we need to do to move forward so that you guys are on the same page. But I think there might be different recollections of those meetings. So I think that might be where we're at, and maybe we just need to include you or other members to move forward.
I agree, Chris. I think that would eliminate the rumors that I'm hearing. And I would be very much like to be involved, since I am chairman of Community Human Services, because I really want to see this happen, and I just hate to see it delayed or whatever because of the lack of communication. I think that if we all get on the same boat, we'll get things moving and get further ahead than if we just keep hearing rumors.
And my very humble suggestion would be you have someone from Human Services and someone from Public Works committees on that. Human Services, although you oversee the operations, really the allocation of space always falls to Public Works Committee. So you need to have both committees in lockstep on any decisions moving forward.
And probably space needs.
Throw in a minute taker while you're at it. Then we'll all be on the same page. It sounds as though, okay, go ahead, Gary.
I agree with what Jan has said, but some of the things that they're talking about, I've never been to the building. I like to take a tour of, so I know what you're talking about, this upstairs, downstairs, ring the doorbell, whatever. At least I would know what everybody's talking about when they're talking about making changes or not making changes. So if it's possible, I'd like to either get a personal tour or a tour for any legislator that wants to do it.
We can arrange that, right, Carissa?
Yes, you want to pick maybe a group time that we can do that. So it could be after work, it could be during a day when we're free, but we can arrange that.
Okay. All right. Sounds like we're going to address that that request to have Hunt go in and do something with an assessment this afternoon. I don't think anyone will object to that. Hope, Doc, Lindy, if anything, you get anything out of today, I hope you recognize the board is interested in getting you in there as quickly as possible. And we're focused on the same thing that you are, and that's improving your workspace, improving your security and your safety. And that same goes for DPW and admin. I think we're all on the same page there. We've got to get there. Thank you, Doc. Dwight?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the Hunt assessment, when we're done, we'll actually have a set of drawings as to what we actually purchased. Is that correct, Tom?
Actually, yeah, it will be, along with, so you'll have floor plans of what's existing there, plus what's in there for equipment and everything else.
Yeah.
Much like what we're
So-
actually going to be presenting on the 14th.
It's just gonna let us know what we bought.
Exactly.
That's,
So that'll be-
that's where we're at.
So you'll have a game plan of starting
Yeah.
to where, that way you'll know.
But I
if you wanna
think
go
Fred's suggestion from what I'm hearing is, you really need to get together with Dr. Anderson and say, tell us what you can live with and what you can't live with, and maybe there's not gonna be a whole lot of work that's gotta be done if you listen to what he's saying, because he's coming from a facility that was, I can't imagine him having to stay in it as long as he has, because it's certainly substandard for anything we would have.
What would be the timeline again for Hunt, you think?
So, I don't want this to be confusing, but that analysis is irrelevant of them moving in or out. The reason we haven't, again, we've been put on a path because we were told this is what has to happen. It wasn't a question of, can we just move in as is?
What would be the timeline for drawing?
So, yeah, they'll have them within a month.
It's the same, similar, I don't want to say the same, but similar process in what they've done in the building condition survey for all our other buildings, which they come in with these fancy cameras, and they've done that while all the rest of us have worked. So Tom's right, they can continue on that path even if people are moving in. But it is important to have those building drawings.
All right, we beat it to death. Are we good? All right. So administration, community services, DPW, relevant board members will get together, have a meeting, and we'll deal with Hunt this afternoon and move on from there. Good? Okay. All right, nothing else on the agenda, but we do have some stuff in old business. I was hoping Allison could give us an update on our reapportionment, where we are with that. Good morning.
Good morning. This should be quick.
Okay.
Okay. So we are almost at the end of our 45-day permissive referendum period. That expires on Monday, August 12th. So as long as no petition is signed and authenticated, which I don't believe that should happen, then the clerk of the board will file the local law with the state within 20 days of the permissive referendum period expiring. And then once the local law is filed in the Secretary of State's office, the clerk of the board will send out a legal notice regarding publication of the local law and state that a copy of the local law can be viewed in the clerk of the board's office, and the process will be complete. So just as a reminder, although the local law will be in effect, the redistricting, reapportionment will not go into effect until January 1st of 2026, or 2026. So all of you will still represent the districts that you currently represent through the end of your term on December 31st, 2025.
Okay, so nothing changes for now.
Nothing changes for now.
For those board members who seek reelection, or challengers, anybody seeking election to commence January 26th will petition for the new districts?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And there's nothing we need to do with our Board of Elections as far as notifications or anything like that, or they'll just receive their copy of local law with everybody else, and it'll be up to them to prepare themselves accordingly.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Almost done.
Almost done. Told you it would be a quick report.
Any questions or comments? Anybody heard anything? Just out of curiosity? Anybody sign a petition? No. Okay. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, any new business? We do have some good of the order stuff, but any new business? Okay, any good of the order other than me? District 2 people, any updates on the tour? Any reminders for us? Where, when, what, why, how much money?
It is this Friday. We'll be meeting at Genesee Valley School at 7:45. I have packets for everybody. I will send the itinerary out again, and it should be fun. I bring rain gear. It might rain. I can't control that. And heads up, we probably will be finishing a little bit earlier because Saputo called me day before yesterday and wanted to know if they could change the day, and unfortunately, it's too late in the process to change it. So we probably will be getting done a little bit earlier, but things have been confirmed, and we look forward to having you join us. It's $25, and that will cover the lunch and the tips for the driver and for food. Mr. Healy is providing coffee and donuts at the Horn Room, so we'll leave the school and head over to the Horn Room, and then we will be on the run, so it should be fun.
Genesee Valley School, the front parking lot or the rear parking lot?
They left.
Wherever the bus is.
Probably rear, but I will double check on that and make sure. You all know. Good question.
Last time we did it, it was front. Yeah,
Oh, you did the front? Okay.
but it's a distinguishable bus, right? It's a weird looking, it's not a yellow bus, it's a fancy bus of some kind. So look for the bus.
Right. And it looks like we have about 14 people coming. So,
That's great.
anyway, that's it.
Okay, a note from Brenda on NISAC, for the reservations, is that what it's for?
Credit card authorization.
Credit card authorizations. She needs a copy of everybody's driver's license and driver's license number and a copy of their county ID. So if you're going to intercounty, if you could give that to her or send it to her, that'd be great. Intercounty update. How are we doing on intercounty?
So I need to, if you could let me know whether or not you plan to attend the intercounty meeting. It's Friday, August 16th, and we are also asking legislators that can to please provide a door prize for our guests.
Including those who aren't attending, right?
That would be nice.
Yeah. It will be flowers.
Palmer Opera House.
Pretty sure everybody's aware, but former legislator Chuck Jessup passed away this week. They've got calling hours on tomorrow at Brown and Powers Funeral Home, which is over in Hornell. That's 4 to 6, and then they're doing a brief ceremony at 6 at the funeral home. If any of you would like to attend that. Brenda did a nice job putting together a release from the county that's been picked up, I saw, so that's good. Carissa, just so we're on the same page here with the housing study, the board gave approval, right, to there was some concern about being quick on the housing study. So I want to make sure we've done what we need to do for a grant application to fund the housing study.
Correct, and I believe that application was submitted last week or the week before. We had everything ready to go on that. You typically know within 3 to 4 months if you've received the grant or not. So we had a good time working on it. We had economic development and planning working together on the scope for the RFP so that Delta could put that in the grant application. So I feel like Ashley and Kiera are on the same page with myself on where the direction of this housing study will go.
Okay, thanks. Before we lose you, since we're talking about being on the same page, sewer study, where are we with that?
The sewer study, we're getting ready to pick a consultant. I believe all the scores, the internal reviewers have submitted their scores. And then there were some follow-up questions that Kiera is asking the vendors. So I don't believe we've scheduled interviews because I think that this could be narrowed down in 1 or 2 questions.
And that was funded through ARC grant?
Correct. We'll be coming back to you to award that to a vendor, hopefully this month, to get that done. So.
Okay. All right, one last one, not for you, but for Allison. 2 policies that I think we have close. Maybe you could just give us an update. One is the FOIL policy and the other is the ethics policy.
I'll defer to Chris on those two.
Okay.
I believe FOIL policy, policies run through county administrator, although the county attorney does work on them. That's part of my job description to recommend the policies. So Allison's done a lot of work. They've come to me. We're moving forward to Ways and Means on the FOIL policy next Wednesday. Hope to have the ethics one probably in September.
Okay, September ethics policy. And then remind me, Carissa, you don't have to come up, you can sit there, just remind me, there's a couple other policies that are floating around out there. One was a social media policy.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, there's probably like 50 different policies that we need either updated or written. Social media policy would be one, work from home is another one we don't have a policy for, and having one would clarify situations. More importantly, I sat through the DOT annual audit with mobility management for our transportation system yesterday. We do need updates to some critical policies that are required for funding, not just for DOT, but for some of our CDBGs and others. So I probably am going to be looking to update our Title VI plan off the floor next week, as well as a transportation asset management plan. We need to do that, and we need to add that to my job description. A couple other things that were noted, so that we don't get deficiencies, we need to make sure our paperwork's up to date.
Okay, add what to your job description?
Transportation asset management plan, that I am responsible for seeing that that's executed.
Okay, thank you.
When you go through these things, they actually pull everyone's job descriptions, local law statutes, and if it doesn't specifically say you're responsible, they make you add that to a resolution that someone is responsible for that.
Mr. Sarkin?
Is there any movement on the whole bus deal with Cat County?
Well, unfortunately, as I've signed up for the District 2 tour already, I am unable to attend because I now have to meet with all our potential partners, and August 9th was the only date I could get some of them available. So I am going over to Olean on August 9th and meeting with like 6 different agencies over there that either contribute currently to OATS or might be interested, to kind of talk about what their level of interest in the system is and whether they'd be willing to contribute in future years.
So not really. There was a mobility management meeting a week or two ago, and Ardent Solutions is pretty much doing the bean counting work. They're going to be included in that meeting with the other partners, right?
Correct. They will be there. I'm going to be there. I believe Mallory is going with me.
And they'll have a better, what they're really trying to get it narrowed down to is coming to this board with an actual number. So we know, we can feel comfortable knowing that there's no county costs associated with the endeavor. They're just not there yet. Okay, that's enough. Anything else for the good of the order? Jan?
Have we actually received the money from Congressman Langworthy yet for the fair?
No, so that all goes through FUD, which is Transportation, Housing, Urban Development, I believe. They added the T recently, so it sounds more fun. We just got another email from THUD that they're way behind schedule and releasing funds, and just more instructions to hold tight and just take some training seminars and what you need to do. But no, we have not received that yet.
Mr. Healy?
How about the other funding for the Crossroads, the Gateway? Eh?
Another fun conversation, we do have that funding awarded to us. It's very complex when you start going through some of these funding streams. You need different partners on things. On this one, because it is a construction level project and ARC funding, ARC does not have engineers on staff or other construction things. They require you to have a basic agency with another approved agency that does that. Their default one is USDA. There is some small chance that we could work with New York State ESD instead, which would be our preference, and we're waiting for information on whether or not they will accept us as a basic agency so that we could move forward on that. We're hopefully nailing that down very soon.
And we've also applied for additional funding for the following year, is that correct?
We have been working with Delta Development and submitted the applications through the congressional process. We do have endorsements from Senator Schumer and Congressman Langworthy. I believe that Senator Gillibrand also signed off on that request, somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.6 million to work on infrastructure and further future development for the Gateway Center project.
Thank you. I think that when the representatives for Schumer and Gillibrand's office came and went on the tour of the area there, I think that was very beneficial to all those funding streams that for all the projects we had in the county, and that they seemed unusually very receptive to our needs this year. We should know the result of those by this fall. Is that correct?
Those application, the process usually goes through committee structure. It's generally announced sometime October, November, right around the time the federal fiscal year comes into play. So we would anticipate we'll hear something around that time. But as you say, in the meantime, we do maintain relationships with those congressional offices and make sure that we try to keep them in the forefront. Delta works with that as well. And then when we have an opportunity, we certainly press the flesh, so to speak, to make sure that they remember our requests for funding.
Thank you.
Okay, enough for today? All right, so we did add another cow, not the 14th, but the following Wednesday. That one, the majority of that is going to cover ARPA, and we're hoping Terry can give us a little bit more context with our fund balance. We've got all these expenses flying all over the place, and I think we don't, as a board, have a great understanding of just how much of a wallet we're working with here. So hopefully we can get that out of the treasurer's office. And then I think that should probably cover a couple hours. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, would anyone care to make a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Legislator Hanchett, seconded by Legislator Havey. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.